got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
Welcome back into the channel, DDFFB, another DD Fantasy mock draft. I got myself, Mitch and Shane. You can follow these guys on X, Dino MC, and Shane is the worst if he actually goes on there. He does, because I see him retweet all the DD stuff, so I know he is still active on there.
Check me out on Blue Sky.
Yeah, check Shane out on Blue Sky. I got to put that in there. Oh, and the Ray GQ. Check out Ray GQ. Yes. He got hacked, unfortunately. So the old Ray GQ handle, you won't be able to find it. But the Ray GQ. So follow all Ray's work that he's doing over there on his feed with his mock drafts over on the Ray GQ YouTube channel. So like and subscribe to this channel. We've done a bunch of these mocks, and this is going to be another one, fellas. Probably going to be maybe back to the basics a little bit for some, but there's going to be some unique strategy with this one heading into Senior Bowl week. We're going to do a 12-team Superflex start 11, half PPR. So nothing fancy, no point per carry, just half PPR for everybody except for tight ends, and it's going to be 1.5 tight end premium. So, Mitch, I'm going to start with you before we get into the picks. The first thing you see here is the 1.5 tight end premium, which is triple what everybody else gets. How does that impact your strategy? It is a lineup league. It is a start 11, so it's not super shallow, but not super deep. Nothing else crazy. But how do you kind of view the position specifically relative to all of the other positions? And then I'm going to ask Shane a similar question.
So for me, the first round stays pretty stock. I think there's the guys that I like in the first round are going to stay there. But the second round wide receivers that you're seeing in normal, if you see like a 0.5 tight end premium, you're going to see a lot more wide receivers in there. And I suspect we're going to see a lot more tight ends in this one in the second round.
Shane, it's half PPR for everything. And this is a running back heavy draft. I know we did a one quarterback half PPR mock, and it was just basically RBs through the roof. Do you take a similar strategy here, knowing that this league probably makes it tougher for you to get running backs in those flex spots, given this scoring? What's your approach?
Yeah, I mean, this draft leans right into the strengths of the class, right? I want to fade wide receiver, and the quarterbacks probably are going to get faded until me and Mitch battle over one guy in particular, like two hungry dogs. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm going to be going running back and tight end heavy. Problem is, I mean, for me, I'm not as versed in the tight end class, right? So I probably should have looked at the settings before I joined this league and paid $150, knowing that I got to do this draft. But, I'm going to struggle through and see how many tight ends we can take in the first. Well, there's only 2 rounds. So see how many tight ends we could take in the first round. Now, it's not a challenge, but, 3 times the scoring is a lot. Not great with math, but 3 times anything is like almost like 3 times more than the other thing. So I'm definitely going to be going tight end.
That is definitely the Shane math right there. Hopefully everybody can rewind the video and make sure they can do the same math. But I'm kind of with Mitch. There's going to be considerations for tight ends over some just random flex players that may go later in the draft. But I think this kind of speaks more towards just the overall format and how I would treat the tight ends relative to specifically the receivers. Because you could argue, and I've talked about it quite a bit, that last year we had a bunch of those running backs that finished in that RB like 8 through 25 range that were very similar, right? The guys that stayed healthy, the guys that get a prerequisite amount of work every game, they were pretty much dominant in the flexes for a lot of teams, especially a format like this. You'd probably have teams that were starting 4 or 5 running backs every week if they hit on a couple of those guys that maybe they didn't expect to be regular starters. I think where the tight ends come into play here is they're probably flexed at an even higher rate than the receivers. So it's not so much about I have to move the tight ends up. It's just I probably don't have to be as, I guess, liberal on the receivers that I'm willing to take. I can be a little more strict in terms of what types of profiles I'm looking for. I probably don't want to chase the low ADOT, high, I need high reception totals to get there types of players, right? Like these are the ones where you look up and you go, wow, this guy had 100 catches. This is like the Wan'Dale Robinson effect. In a half PPR, he had 100 catches. But that's not great compared to a running back that just somehow managed to get 10 touchdowns and wasn't heavily reliant on receptions to score the points. So I think that the receiver profiles maybe just change a little bit. And I'm willing to say, well, I don't need a receiver there, but it doesn't mean, guys, that I need another tight end in the rookie draft. It just means I probably have a better shot at flexing a tight end that's already in the NFL in one of those flex spots. So maybe it changes the second round. But any other thoughts on the format for either of you? I don't think we care really about quarterbacks. Quarterbacks don't change in this because we didn't specify any scoring or anything. Real quick, Mitch, running back profiles, does that change in a half PPR at all? Are you looking for specific archetypes maybe over others because of the scoring, or does it not really matter?
If we were going more than 2 rounds, I could bring up a guy like Jordan James. Like, I love Jordan James in the PPR leagues. Probably not going to like him in this type of league, but I don't think we're going to get too much in those kind of prospects. Maybe RJ Harvey a little bit, that kind of prototype, but, we'll see how it goes.
Shane, receiver-wise, real quick, do you at all care about the receiver archetypes here? Are you okay with taking shots on like more boomer bust type guys, like the Christian Watson types? Are they more exciting in this type of draft when you kind of are forced to throw them in your last flex? Do you want the Gabe Davis profile over the Christian Kirk profile, for instance, even though I told you Christian Kirk will probably outscore Gabe Davis on a point per game basis? Which one would you kind of prefer here? Any preference on looking at receiver profiles?
I mean, I got to be honest with you. I think this class leans towards this settings, right? These settings, that's how you speak English. I need volume, and these are volume receivers. Of course, I want, Malik Neighbors in every draft. I want Brian Thomas Jr. in every draft. I'm not going to get them. So if I can get guys that command volume, like a good bit of these receivers do in this setting, I'll feel a little better because they're going to need that volume to overcome the half-point PPR. I would like guys that score touchdowns, but look, you get what you get, and sometimes that's the class, right? You can't change what the class is. You can only change how you're going to draft based around it.
100%. All right, let's get to it. We'll probably talk through more of this theory as we get through the picks. Draft order is what you see on the screen. Myself, then Mitch, and then Shane. We will go in snake order. So we will go 1 through 3 and then back around and repeat that 4 different times for 2 rounds. So 101, I still think it's pretty easy. Ashton Jeanty, this is the perfect format where he's probably worth even more. We talked about this on the 1QB mock. He's probably worth even more in this format relative to the other picks. Now, I do think I've heard a couple pods recently talking about Jeanty versus the rest of the class. Like, if you could get Jeanty or another top 5 back and you got your choice of 2 others in the top 12, would you rather have that or would you rather have him? This is a start 11. I probably, if I'm picking here and I didn't luck into this pick, I probably need more than this single running back. So I think this is the format where you go to maybe the heavy contending teams that are just a hammer running back away and say, what pick will you give me, or what player will you give me on top of a future pick, on top of a future first to move off of this pick? And hopefully they have, I don't know, one of the top 7 or 8 picks where I feel like I'm getting another one of those top 5 running backs. If so, I think this is the format where someone may actually pay that high leverage price to get him now versus a couple of the guys that I can get at 106 through 108, which ultimately could end up with landing spots that are just as good or better with the same draft capital. And before I let you guys go, we are drafting this like we expect this to happen after the NFL draft. So we're going to make some justifications on players like they're probably going to get drafted here, or they're probably going to get this type of capital, and that's why we're taking them. But Jeanty 101. Mitch, any thoughts on value of the 101 in this format versus others? And then what are you doing at 102?
Comparing it, I think the problem is Ashton, I don't care if it's a 12-team league, 10-team league, 14-team league, 16-team league. That's going to be the pick. But in a league like this, what I really like is I firmly believe Jeanty is going to go to a spot to where the team needs him, right? A running back needy team, because he's going to go in the first. Odds are you're probably not going to see a Detroit Lions scenario to where they have Swift at the time. They have Montgomery, I think, and then, they draft Gibbs. I don't remember exactly how it worked out, but they definitely had Swift at the same time. So, but I think with Jeanty, you're going to just see him go to a quarterback needy team. And so I think his price is going to continue to climb. So I'm more than happy just to keep that 101 because I think you're getting more the closer we get to the draft. But with the running back, I'm going with now you're getting to the guys that you have to worry about. Oh, hey, do they get good landing spots? And I think Omarion Hampton, especially in a league like this to where it's 0.5 PPR, to me, I've seen him comped a lot to Nick Chubb, and to me, it makes a lot of sense. Can he catch the ball out of the backfield? 100%. Is that his bread and butter? It's not. It's running through the tackles and blowing up dudes, and he's going to do a great job doing it. To me, he's firmly the running back 2 for me. I mean, I love the next guy almost as much, but I think Hampton is just an absolute stud, and so I'm more than happy to take him at 102 in the vast majority of my leagues.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen, I think, 4 different running backs be people's RB2s. Mm-hmm. And so this is a draft where, especially in this half PPR format, even if you don't want to take a quarterback, which I think a lot of people are scared to pull the trigger on a quarterback without, hey, can I trade back a couple spots because I don't really need to take a quarterback here? I think you'll have a lot of options at RB that could potentially end up being the RB2. Because I'm looking right now, I think all of the other running backs, Mitch, go outside of the top, 35 picks in the NFL draft. Because if you look at the top of the second round, I don't know if there's an obvious running back pick there. Maybe Cleveland could be one. I guess, you could see a team take one right at the beginning of the second round that you may not expect. But I don't think Tennessee is taking a running back. Maybe the Giants, maybe the Patriots, but that would be one where if a guy got that capital, he probably separates himself from the pack. But everybody else is probably between pick 40 and pick 60. And it's going to be completely landing spot dependent. I can't use draft capital as a tiebreaker there. So Shane, you're up at 103. Curious to what you're doing. You're usually a quarterback whore in drafts, but maybe not here. What are you doing?
No, not this year. I'm going to be doing a lot of, and I've talked about this before, I'm doing like the NFL. I'm building out the other positions before I just slam a quarterback in there if the quarterback isn't what I need him to be, right? I don't want to be in a position where I'm taking another Kenny Pickett. Not that any of these prospects, quarterback-wise, are as bad as Kenny Pickett, but just as an example. I'm just going to go running back, probably a guy hopefully closer to 40 than 60, hopefully ends up in a good landing spot, Caleb Johnson. Again, not a receiver, or it's actually the first time I'm saying so, not again, but not a receiver, but he did get up to 20 receptions last year. So there's that. It's better than he did in his first 2 seasons. And he had really big holes to run through last year. I'm not smart enough or scouty enough to know what that means, except that when you get to the NFL, pretty sure those holes will be smaller, right? Right. Yeah. Unless you're on the Eagles. And if he's drafted to the Eagles, well, then we have all their other host of problems. But I'm just going to assume that's not going to happen. And I'm going to assume that what everybody likes about him is going to translate to the NFL. And again, hopefully the landing spot doesn't crush him.
104. Who are you taking at 104? Then I want to ask your opinion on the relative value of these picks. You're going Tyler Warren at 104.
Yeah, I'm just Tyler Warren at this point. You already talked about the running backs being a little bit of a cluster, right? And if this draft is after the NFL draft, obviously I'll think different, maybe. But Warren's going to get you volume and a high ADOT, I think. Triple the scoring, triple again. I think Warren's a good pick here. And even if it was 1.0 regular PPR and 1.75 tight end premium, I'd still be thinking about him here. That probably would be a little too early, but he would still be in my thought process, or at least in my thoughts at that point.
Mitch, thoughts on these picks? I mean, I'm just sitting here looking at, there's, I think 5 or 6 players you could justify going at the 103, 4, 5, 6, 7. Do you feel bad making picks here since it kind of feels like it's already get your guy season? Or
it kind of is. Yeah, it's rough. And and this kind of draft to where, there's going to be a couple more tight ends propped up. I'm hoping you're not wide receiver needy, because I'm not sure if there's going to be these guys that you want to draft. There's prospects that I like personally, but in a half PPR league, it makes me wonder when we're really going to start to see the wide receivers come off, because right here at the 105, I'm not taking a wide receiver. I'm going to go Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders to me is the best quarterback in this class. And you have to worry a little bit about the sideshow that comes with him, which is nothing against him. He's he's Deion's son. That's just how it goes. But I think, he's going to be a top 4 draft pick at worst. The good thing about him is I think he's NFL ready. I think there's a lot of guys that come out of college now who just, how the system is ran, they're not ready for the NFL. Sanders is a dude who just is. Like, I have zero worries about him starting week 1 and immediately getting flustered. Like, we saw what he dealt with behind that Colorado offensive line for the last 2 years. If he goes to a team with a bad offensive line, he's already used to that. We know he holds the ball for a little bit too long, but I think that's something that could definitely get fixed in the NFL. So I feel really, really good about Sanders here.
Yeah, man. It's like, I'm already feeling when Caleb Johnson came off the board that, like, I don't know, and this is right now, but maybe it's just this format too, where I don't know how much movement ability there is within this 103 to maybe the 102 has a little more steam because you can pick your choice of any direction you want to go, whether it's running back, receiver, quarterback. But after that, like, it could be the wild, wild west. And it doesn't feel like if you have the 103 or the 104, because historically I did a draft pick war thing last year. I'm going to try to update it this year, but I'm guessing the numbers that pop out compared to what it feels like in this class is not going to align this season, because most classes, if you have the 103 or 104, you should be able to extract some extreme leverage from a couple picks down, even if that's just a couple extra seconds or something like that. But it feels like we're already in the range where if I'm sitting at 106 and 107 with these 2 picks, I'm not pressured to do anything specific to move up 2 spots because I have to have a quarterback. I mean, listen to Shane's logic on just passing quarterback entirely. Like, I'll just find building out non-quarterbacks, even if I don't even have a QB2. I think a lot of people are like, well, if I'll just go worry about trading for Geno Smith later, or, or a depressed Jared Goff later because he lost his coordinator. Like, it feels like I can do that rather than burn the 102 on a QB because I don't have one. So I am going to go Cam Ward at 106. I think people in the comments are going to be like, damn, you got the 101 quarterback at the 106 in a rookie draft. But, he doesn't have the steam that a typical 101 in the NFL has. And I think part of that might be a mistake because historically, like, this is a pretty insulated pick that is going to get multiple years of a chance to start. And I think there's just people don't think he can be elite. So he's getting punished a little bit and just falling behind. I mean, is it a hot take to say one of Omarion, Hampton, and Caleb Johnson, we might look back and go, they're just another running back that's a decent starter, but like, they're not guaranteed to be a hammer. You know what I mean? So I'll go Cam Ward at 106. You guys think it's crazy that the QBs fell outside the top 4 here? Would that be typical, Shane?
No, I don't see anything wrong with that. A lot of people do not like Sanders, and not even just because of his dad. Personally, his dad is awesome. He's one of the coolest football players of all time. People that don't like him just don't like life, so they should go kick rocks. But a lot of people don't like Sanders as a prospect, right? They don't see a ceiling, so they don't like him. Cam Ward, they're worried that he's not, I don't know, not Anthony Richardson, not that, because he's got a ton of more starts, but there's a lot of people that are worried about him. So I'm not surprised. It's, you're going to have people in your draft that just, they always go quarterback, but I don't know if they have the 101, 2, 3, and 4. So I wouldn't be surprised seeing these guys go later in some drafts, to be quite honest with you, if we're being 100.
Yeah, I agree with Shane here to where I think this is kind of what we're going to see more than likely with maybe there's one of them in the top 6, but not both of them in a lot of leagues because the upside isn't there. And everyone kind of says like Cam Ward is this more athletic guy, but he's just more athletic than Sanders. That's it. Like compared him to Drake May, it's like not even the same class of athlete. So for me, yeah, he's going to go 101, but I think their ceilings are really close to the same. And you hope they could be Dynasty quarterback 10, maybe, hopefully.
Well, Mitch, so assuming there's going to be more than a quarterback needy team picking inside the top 6 of your draft, if you hold the 103 or 104, but you don't like Sanders or Ward, what can that pick get you on the open market at quarterback? Because I think when you start looking at your needs And then you look at your league and you go, well, let's see, I'm scared to draft Cam Ward, who's going to be the 101 in the NFL draft. But then, I go to KTC and it says I should be able to get any of the non-top 7 or 8 quarterbacks for the 102 or the 103 or the 104. But then the person trading you away one of those QBs goes, well, what quarterback can I replace them with? Oh, I don't like those guys. So kind of feels like there's this gap in the market where like people can honestly look at the 103 and go, I'm not even trading, Jordan Love or Trevor Lawrence for that pick because I can't adequately replace them. So how much does that kind of impact the veteran QB market? Because it's obvious, well, if I don't want to draft Cam Ward, I should just go trade for, Dak Prescott. But then the Dak manager is like, dude, I don't want to trade Dak because I can't replace him with this draft. So it creates this weird market, don't you think?
Oh, it's huge because I think it's going to really mess up the trade partners, because if you just have 2 quarterbacks in a super flex league, someone goes and offers me the 104, but they want my Tua, who's my quarterback 2 at that point. So I trade him and I'm like, I guess I like Sanders, but I'm not going to complete that trade. So I would have to have a backup trade to go and get a quarterback that I like, that I could start, week 1 in my dynasty leagues. And so I think it's going to be really, really hard to pick up quarterbacks unless you're trying to give up that 101, 102, adding a piece, and then trying to get, one of the top 8 guys.
Yeah. I think that's worth doing instead of get ahead of it. If you can already identify that and you're willing to say, hey, I do like Tua or Brock Purdy better than these QBs, it's not a crazy price to go pay the 104 or 105 to get one of those guys, given what we're talking about in this draft. So 107, I'll go Travion Henderson. This feels like a tier break. It's tough to pass on Tet McMillan. Those were the 2 picks. I'm now sitting here thinking like, man, would the league punish me this much for leaning into the format? And I think he's going to be the RB2 when we get all said and done with it, because he can do a mix of things that I think nobody else in the class can do. And, one way you can get there in a half PPR is not just the receptions, but also chunks of yardage. You know what I mean? If you can put up even on, I won't say minimal touches, but you don't need 30 touches a game and every goal line carry to put up a lot of points. I think he's going to threaten closer to RB2 than RB4. But I think people are also going to crush me in the comments for not taking Tet McMillan because he's the clear wide receiver 1. So Mitch, you're up at 108. Thoughts?
Well, I don't think you need to worry about people crushing you because I'm taking a wide receiver, and it's not Tet McMillan because he's wide receiver 3. I just put a video out on it.
Yes, you did.
And this isn't me hating Tet McMillan. If everyone wants to watch it, it's top 5 wide receivers. It's right there. It's right there in the feed. My thing with McMillan, I will get McMillan when someone drafts him. That's fine. But with Luther Burden is, I think he is just an absolute solid wide receiver that doesn't have a lot of faults. He's a little bit older. And then you can look at his 24 stats and be like, wow, he was a lot worse in 24 than he was in 23. Well, it's because Missouri was a lot worse in 24 than they were in 23. I think he's extremely safe. He's going to go in the first round. And so I'm not worried about the draft capital. Might have to worry about landing spot. Maybe goes to somewhere with a quarterback that we don't love for whatever reason, or an offensive coordinator we don't love. But he's easily my wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably going to go in the draft range where, like, there's a world where, like, T. Higgins leaves and the Bengals draft him. Something like that where you're going like, wow, he could be wide receiver 1. I think that's probably less likely than more likely that he lands in one of those spots where you're just like, oh, my gosh, he's the guy from day 1. But very interesting, Shane. I saw you raise your hand a little bit like Tet McMillan, 109. Are you shocked?
Well, 1, I can't see, so I want to make sure this is my pick. Yeah.
It is you. Yes, 2 in a row.
I'm shocked you didn't take him. I'm not shocked that Mitch didn't take him, because I listened to Dynasty Theory or Dynasty Weekly talking about their top 5 wide receivers, and Tet was not number 1. So no shock to me there. I'm taking him. I just get that out of the way. He was a wide receiver 1 before the season. He's the wide receiver 1 after the season. I don't think he's done anything to change that. I'm not a scout, in case anyone didn't know, but I think the NFL still values him as the wide receiver 1. If come April 30th. I don't know when the draft is. Tet McMillian falls to the second round, third round. I'll rethink the position. But when I look at Tet versus Burden or any other wide receiver in this class, there's only a couple of them that I can foresee turning into a Batman as opposed to a Robin. And he's one of the ones that I can see turning into a Batman as opposed to a Robin. Not that Robin's bad, and Robin was pretty awesome in the trilogy. I forget what his name was in the third one. He was pretty awesome when he wasn't Robin yet. But in this case, I'm going to go Batman, take Tet.
Shane, you return on the clock at the 110. Oh. What are you doing?
I'm taking Quinshon Judkins, excuse me. Sorry about that. I like the other way that you can score points in a half-point PPR, touchdowns. And this dude is an absolute touchdown monster. Like, he's just, I can't, everybody watches it. They say it. Like, that dude is driven. Like, he's getting to the end zone, and I don't care about his long speed. How often do you see running backs break off 60, 70-yard runs that aren't named Saquon Barkley? Not a lot. So if he can only rip off, 20, 25-yard touchdowns, I'll be okay with that. But I think this guy's going to get a lot of red zone goal line work, and I think he's going to score a ton of touchdowns. So, yeah, give me Judkins.
Mitch, do you think after the national title game that there'll be people, I've already seen it, where people have Judkins ahead of Henderson? And they're now talking about how he was the best running back in the SEC as a true freshman, and how could he have gotten worse? And I don't know. I think you could literally sell me that if we look up the day of the NFL draft, that any of the 5 running backs that have gone, people could say that's the RB1. Just based on everything, not just draft capital, not just their profile, but all of them have a degree of hype sentiment where if you just told me Judkins, like if I read it on Twitter, someone says Judkins is the best running back in the class, like someone's saying that, and I'm not like dismissive of it. So I have to put that in the back of my mind that there might be somebody else that thinks that.
Yeah, and it could easily be the case. The one thing that we have to worry about, there's all these running backs that we love, but how many of these running backs, maybe NFL teams would go, there's a lot of running backs. Let's take him in the 3rd round. Let's take him in the 4th round. Then all of a sudden they're like, I like my Devin Singletary a little bit more for half the year than you only get a half year of Tracy, if Singletary doesn't get hurt. And so, like, as much as I feel really good about these running backs, I kind of like all the rest of them that we're going to name for the rest of the draft. Like, I'm really worried because we're talking about this as if the NFL draft's already happened. This is how we kind of could see these players going. I don't know if we end up seeing this many running backs the first round because some of them end up getting buried, and then we find the hype on the wide receiver that gets the good landing spot, or the tight end that goes to the Bengals or whatever, so I could definitely see that stuff happening.
Yeah, I think the justification now for almost every running back pick going forward is going to be, I think this guy's going to get round 3 draft capital. And if he does, then I'm going to like to take him here. But if he doesn't, then he's real dependent.
Just to Mitch's point, and we're not the first people to discuss this. We're going to care less about 3rd and 4th draft round capital than we have in the past, because this class is so deep, and we do know the NFL is going to go, well, we have 10 guys that are great at really similar, so let's go another way here, and we can get a running back in the 4th round, and God forbid, maybe even the 5th round. That's when it's going to be crazy. When a 5th round running back goes to the Cowboys, are you taking him over a 2nd round running back? Something like that. Like, you might see strange things in your draft.
Completely
isn't that something we've kind of already done, though? Like, once you get to the 3rd round, doesn't it almost feel like in fantasy circles, we start to just strictly look at the landing spot and what depth chart they're on? And, we don't sit here and go, this guy was a late 3rd round pick, and then this guy was a early 5th round pick. How many people actually use the capital there as the tiebreaker instead of the depth chart or the landing spot? It feels like we've kind of already done that, right? Like,
I think we're getting there. I think there's still a lot of conversations where people are like, oh, don't worry about landing spot. Don't worry about landing spot. I'm always worried about landing spot. Like, there's some places I don't want a quarterback to go because I just flat out think the team just is going to be awful. So there's whoever goes to the Jets, I'm really worried about them. Like, I hope the Jets can turn it around, but they haven't had a good quarterback in my lifetime. I can't think of the last good quarterback they had.
Chad Pennington, probably.
Yes, there you go. Yep.
But it isn't a lot of the, and this is the problem that I've always had with a lot of the way that we use data in the fantasy space, is a lot of the knocks on draft capital was like, well, a day 3 running back is likely not to survive into a second contract. They're not going to likely survive competition from the next year's draft. But like us 3 and a lot of people, we don't even care about that anymore. I care about what can you help me potentially in week 2 or week 4 or week 6. If opportunity opens, are you there to take advantage of it? I'm not looking. I mean, there's certain guys that were good enough last year that I'm like, okay, I sure hope that Tyrone Tracy and Bucky Irving don't just get flat out replaced. But I think we're pretty likely to just see them continue in a role until they show that they're not, because they're good enough to be there. But I'm done with this looking at a running back and scared that their draft capital is going to mean they're at risk in the future of not getting another job or being pushed by a future draft pick. We already acknowledge that. It's your job to figure, do I want to move that player in the offseason or during the season, or don't I? But I don't even factor that in anymore, because usually those base rate conversations are for people that are playing Dynasty for the long term, and that's just not the majority of people anymore.
Yeah, completely agree.
Mitch, 111, you're up.
So, like I said, we are drafting like the draft already happened. I believe this quarterback's going to end up going in the first round, and it's Jackson Dart. So you guys are, I'm really counting on you guys, because you guys are going to see him next week in person. I think that a Senior Bowl week is going to be huge for him. I think if he goes out and fails, this pick probably isn't going to be close to the first round. But I really, really think he's going to do well there. He has good accuracy, not great, but good. He has very good anticipation. He's a great athlete. He grew up like 10 miles from my house. So, I'm pulling for him just for that reason. But I really, really think we have at least 5 extremely quarterback needy teams in the Titans, Browns, Giants, Raiders, and Jets. And then the Saints are kind of there. The Rams, Stafford looks like he's coming back, but even he said he's going to take some time. So the beginning of the second round, we still have a lot of teams that could end up drafting this guy. And we've seen beginning of the second round quarterbacks end up starting really early in the rookie season. He's a guy that I really started to believe in the more tape that I watched. And he's just growing on me, to be honest. Like, Milroe's not even in the discussion for me as going in the first round. Jackson Dart's getting there, and hopefully a good Senior Bowl week will finish it off for him.
Oh, I know Shane's just sitting there going, man, he got sniped. And I'm not going to take Milroe in the first. I'll let him slide a spot, but he's definitely going to get picked here on the turn. But I think Emeka Egbuka is a very safe, solid pick here. He's definitely going to go in the first round. I mean, even if I heard a conversation today about these Ohio State receivers, and the argument from the analyst was kind of all of the Ohio State receivers early on in their career have kind of been disappointments, from JSN and Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison. And then it's like you look up and they're all really good. They're just not the best receiver in the NFL, but they're all top 20, top 15. And so, not saying Egbuka is those guys, but he's held his own with 2 of those 3 guys on the same rosters. And so I'm going to roll with him. Even if he ends up just being that, it feels like this is a player that people like, is going to get first round capital. I do think there's an element of, if you want a young receiver, you do have to consider taking them, because I don't know, guys, how many more receivers we're going to even draft? Maybe 2 or 3 at most in this mock and in this format. So I think if you're kind of leaning towards scarcity, he's an obvious pick. And then I'm going to take Jalen Milroe 201. Everything you said about Jackson Dart applies to him. You may or may not like him. I think he has a higher likelihood of going higher in the draft than Jackson Dart. But like Jackson Dart, if he's not in the first round or top, I'll give him like top 40 capital. But obviously, quarterbacks got to land in a spot where you can project them to get opportunity in the first year. But as soon as Milroe plays, if he's in one of those spots, the Raiders, the Jets, the Giants, if one of those teams doesn't get a quarterback early and he's there, he's going to start. And then it's just a matter of, do you play the market enough based on whatever it's going to be. And I do think him and Dart are going to have people that hate him and then people that buy into the skill set. So there's going to be a place where you'll be able to move them. So I think those are two good value picks on it. Kind of makes me think, man, if I could have traded the 109 or 108 and gotten 2 picks in the top 15, but not the top 10, I would have done that very easily.
Yeah, I'll let everyone know. So I've been in 2 startups this year, and Michael Penix has gone in front of both Goff and Tua each time. And so all we need is just a little bit of hope with these young quarterbacks, and all of a sudden their value goes up. Like, it's crazy how much it does. So if you get a Milrow who even, maybe it's week 14, just ends up starting. I mean, a lot of these guys, when we take from the 201 to the 204, we're going to hope are going to return value in future years. These quarterbacks probably are if they get early, or I'll say late first round, early second round capital.
Just generally speaking, Mitch, real quick, are these picks, like these 109 through 204 picks, are they vastly being undervalued in startups right now relative to the other assets?
I kind of hate these picks, to be honest, because this is where I end up getting like the Xavier Legettes, because I'm dumb. And, I'll be like, oh, hey, I start buying into the rookie talk in late April. I'm like, no, this guy's going to be really good. And no, he's not. And I just wasted the 112. Like we talked about Ricky Pearsall this past offseason. I'm like, I'm fine with him there. And was he good? He had a good couple games. That was great. But do I like that I had to spend the 112, 201 on him? No, not really.
Fair. 202. What are you doing?
Oh, yeah, I'm up. So I will go wide receiver 2, Travis Hunter, because I am still saying that, to me, he is a wide receiver. If it changes, so be it, because the funny talk is about 2 months ago, all the talk was, hey, wide receivers get paid more, so why would he want to do anything else? And then everyone's like, well, he's actually like a great shutdown corner, and he is, so that's what he's going to do in the NFL. We don't know. In my opinion, he's at worst the 3rd best wide receiver in this class, could very easily end up being the best wide receiver in this class. And so for right now, if you're spending an early second on the guy who's the best athlete, the best football player in this draft, I'm all for it.
I think that might have been the latest we've seen him go, which just because there's other players that people take, but that's, doesn't it feel like, Shane, that you're willing to just piss that pick away if it doesn't work out in gambling that he could be the wide receiver 1 in the class?
Absolutely. Like, I'm just looking at the board, trying to figure out where we could have slotted him in. I mean, obviously he could have slotted in anywhere. I don't know that there's obvious examples of who he should go over, though.
Probably
right?
the QBs. There's going to be people that just don't like those QBs and would just never take them over a guy they know is going in the top 5 of the draft. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, but honestly, that's it. Like, that's the only 2 players you could look at, I think, at least, and go, oh, no, he should definitively go over those guys, considering the format. Mm-hmm. And again, Mitch touched on it. Obviously, he'd be drafted much higher if he just told us he was going to be a wide receiver, which would serve no purpose or benefit to him to do. So I don't expect him to. If you would just tell like one of us and you started to notice us taking him at 102, you would, get the hint. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So, yeah, I thought he was going to hopefully fall one more pick to me, but he didn't. He did not. I don't appreciate it, Mitch. Mitch is my nemesis at this point of the draft, taking Dart and Travis Hunter right in front of me. Unforgivable.
Well, you got back-to-back picks at the 203 and the 204. What are you doing?
I'm really hoping you're not taking the guy that I'm thinking of, because after that, I'm searching a little bit.
I got 2 guys in mind. One of them I don't know if it's going to be great or not, and it doesn't matter what order because they're technically both my draft picks. I'm taking Harold Fannin Jr. Receiving tight end. Hey, you catch a theme with my draft picks. There's going to be a couple more, if not 3, maybe 3 more tight ends that go in this draft. I think at this point you're playing to the format. There are a few running backs left that many people will like. But just based on the format, I think you're going to see some tight end dart throws going on in about this stage of the draft.
Well, you're up again. What are you doing with this pick? Are you going to follow your own logic or no?
Absolutely not. I've already done what I wanted to as far as the tight end. Did a lot of damage. I would love this though. If I had two of the top, 14 picks in a format like this and just went tight end on people and absolutely just I would love it. Because of course they're going to hit. Tight ends never fail ever.
And they all hit right away.
Immediately.
Yeah, they all do. Yeah.
Yeah. Noah Fant never happened. I don't know what you're talking about. Go back and check my conversations about Noah Fant pre NFL career, how much I love that guy. I'm going to go Devin Neal. Super productive, right? I don't know. At this point, it is a lot of running backs guessing who's going to land where, who's going to have draft capital, some combination of it. So I'm just going to go with him, assuming that he'll be maybe in that mix as the next running back off the board in the NFL.
Do you guys remember how safe Michael Mayer was? He was so safe going into the draft last year.
I was trying to think. I was driving to work today, and I was trying to think of a tight end. I think it was another Notre Dame tight end, like 7 or 8 years ago, that was supposed to be a guy too. And I remember just drafting him in the first round, and I can't remember his name. I just remember him flaming out and then having to retire not long after that. But he was terrible before that. I can't even remember his name. But yeah, Michael Mayer. Yeah, dude, he was going to be a stud.
Yeah.
And then he got ethered by the best rookie tight end of all time. Yeah, there you go.
He does have a shot now with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll loves himself some multiple tight ends on the field at one time. So Michael Mayer season. Mitch, 205. I got sniped on Devin Neal. That was going to be that's the guy that I think after the Senior Bowl, people are going to go, okay, that's the best running back at the Senior Bowl. And that's going to be the biggest riser. So Shane got me there. What are you doing at 205?
Well, I'll be very surprised. There we go. Okay. I was looking through the sheet. I'm like, his name's not popping up. It doesn't make sense. Colston Loveland. He was my tight end 1 before Tyler Warren bursted on the scene this year. His team market share is absurd. It's like in the 97th percentile because the quarterbacks couldn't throw to anybody. And so they only threw to him. But half the balls they threw to him end up being interceptions. It's just crazy. But the guy, let me go back to my sheet real quick. But dude, he's 6'5", 245. Like he is an NFL body tight end. And he's a guy who I don't know if he's going to get catches week 1, but week 1, he's going to be on the field in the starting tight end for whatever team that drafts him. Like he's going to be on the field. Whether we actually see production out of that, I can't tell you. But I mean, in this kind of draft, getting a guy like Colston Loveland at the 205 kind of makes me start to, you know what, maybe I was a little bit wrong earlier. Maybe this 201 to 206 area is a really strong one to buy into.
That was going to be my pick because I think that there's this, and I'm curious because you guys have been around a long time. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that say Colston Loveland is the tight end 1. Now, they're not going as far as saying he's the best tight end from day 1, which I think that is leaking into people's opinions of him a little bit because it used to be, okay, a 20-year-old tight end that produced when he did, that's going to be a guaranteed first-round pick. Like, how is that not a first-round prospect? But in today's Dynasty game, you know, you picture other tight ends that came in the league, young, athletic, somewhat productive in college, and you're like, yeah, but I got to wait 3 years for that guy. And then if they don't hit right away, I'm going to have this asset that I don't know what to do with. But there's also a world where Mitch, he comes in and he just is a starter day 1. And if he's good, all of a sudden you have, okay, wait a second. He's a starting tight end that I can start in my league. And he's 21 and he looks a lot more like the next elite tight end than, no shade on Harold Fannin, but he's older. Tyler Warren's 2.5 years older than Colston Loveland. So, I mean, those guys, not that they have to smash right away, but I could look up and go, if they're all kind of similarly productive, the masses might start shifting towards the younger guy just a little bit more. Go ahead, Shane.
Just had one question. Kyle Pitts was how old?
But to your point, what could you have done with Kyle Pitts after that
his
first
rookie
year?
Season? Oh, you could have sold him for the world. Absolutely sold him for the world. But I bet, all things being equal, any of these tight ends smash in their first year, you could sell them for the world in this format.
I agree.
Now, obviously, one has a longer runway because he's younger. So we're more forgiving. It's like, well, he's 21. You know what I mean? Let's wait till he's 23, where the other dude is 23. So he doesn't have that same, I guess, grace that we will give Colston.
I agree with the logic of him being tight end 3 right now, but I think people are letting kind of some of those historical tendencies that we're going away from say he's just not going to produce right away. And we don't know that. You know what I mean? We don't know that for sure. And if he does, there's an added bonus of, well, damn, if he does, then okay, he's 3 years younger than the other guys. You know what I mean?
We are starving for tight ends. So you have
another good point.
Bowers, McBride, Laporta, and then we kind of put Hawkinson is in there as tight end 4. After that, we have all old dudes. We have nothing. So the second one of these guys hits, all of a sudden he's worth whatever the 102 was previously. You know, none of us are going to go take him there right now. But if Tyler Warren hits, he's probably going to be worth close to what Jeanty is in established leagues. I mean, all these guys, they just have to have a good 4 to 6 week run. All of a sudden, their value is going to shoot up, and it's going to stay there because no one's going to want to drop him down. Just guys, we'll talk about Kyle Pitts, is like the hope is there, and there's just no hope for the vast majority of tight ends in the league.
Very good point. All right, so I got 2 picks in a row. I'm going to kind of game theory these picks a little bit. Obviously, these are not going to be the same team that's probably making these picks. But I think just what I'm reading right now, I obviously know how Mitch feels about some of these players. I think if I'm looking at these picks and I have one of these 2 picks, and then I have at least my third and maybe another third and maybe a fourth, I'm sitting here looking at, gosh, we've said this every mock, but there's literally 15 running backs that I could justify taking over the next 25 to 30 picks. And all of them are going to get drafted. A lot of them are going to get drafted between round 3 and round 5. Any of them could land in spots where the immediate handcuff. And so, like, I'm not really convicted after Devin Neal went to pick anybody. So I'm just going to go back to back. I'm just going to take Matthew Golden and Trey Harris and hopefully force the board to then go, okay, if I want a receiver, I don't think there's a clear next receiver off the board. I think there's 5 or 6 guys, a lot of them at the Senior Bowl, that you could literally say, oh, that's a top 50 pick. Eric Iomanner, Jalen Royals, Tez Johnson, all these guys you could go after the Senior Bowl. Yeah, that's definitely a round 2, round 3 pick, and I like them, but I don't know who that is. And I think Harris and Golden are definitely the next 2 off the board. I wasn't a huge fan of Golden, but a lot of people are like, dude, that guy could be the best receiver in the class, and I was taking Isaiah Bond over him 3 weeks ago. So there we go. Kind of pushing the board a little bit to see if you guys even consider another receiver. Mitch, what do you think? You think that cleans the board out at receiver for this draft?
It sucks. I really wanted Trey Harris, but I'm going to go one more wide receiver in Jalen Royals because he's Utah State guy. People are starting to hear about him more. The process is playing out. But to me, he is just as good as a prospect as some of the guys we've mentioned. But he played for Utah State, and he got injured, I think, in middle of October, if I'm remembering right. And so, like, his stats aren't great, but when you actually sit down and watch the guy play, you're like, holy crap, that's an NFL wide receiver. And so, like, Chris Godwin is like the perfect comp for like half the players we've mentioned already. Just slot wide receiver, physically dominant. But Jalen Royals is just, he's like a little bit more muscular than all the rest of these guys are. And so I really, really like him. Especially like around the 208. I mean, I could probably grab another tight end. I'm not sure if that guy, if I'm even going to like him, if he's going to be on game day rosters, who knows? But I think Jalen Royals is at least going to give me points.
Shane, you're up with your last 2 picks. Let's give us some names, my friend.
Oh, well, I'm excited that this dude's going to be here for me. He's become one of my favorite players somehow. After I absolutely hated him in the first half of the college football playoffs, Cameron Scadabo. The community's going to like him for multiple reasons. We don't need to get into them here, but they kind of look like us. There's going to be a lot of reasons the community likes him, right? He is a grinder. I hate using those tropes because that is him. Like, the dude's just, I don't know if fun's the word, right? Fun's not the word. There's dog in him, right? Do we still say that? Do people still say that? Do they still put the meme up with the dog in the lung, in the heart?
In Philly, they probably do.
If they do, well, and they spell it wrong. They spell it GWA dog. Anyway, I think he's got dog in him. I think the community's going to like him. He's versatile. I hope he doesn't run a 4.6 at the combine.
I don't hate it. It's funny, Mitch. I've seen that the peak Cam Scatterboo was during the game where they lost to Texas. And then ever since, I've seen a lot of people kind of nitpicking and saying like, this guy's a fraud and I definitely wouldn't have him in my top 6, or I don't know. He feels like he's a little more polarizing than I thought that he was going to be, just because that week where, you know, the lead up to that game and then during that game and the couple days after it, it was like this guy took the college football landscape by storm. And now I see a lot more hate, but maybe that's just the nature of when people start talking about you, you're going to get people on the other side that are detractors.
With him, I think it's really hard because he has a great receiving profile too. Like if you just look at his stats and you didn't actually see the person, you'd be like, oh, wait, why is this guy going towards the end of the second round? But you look at him and he's like muscled up. I mean, his traps are huge and it looks like he's not going to run fast. But what happens if he actually runs a 4.5? Does he get locked in at everyone's running back 5 at that point?
He's going in the first round of every single last NFL rookie fantasy draft. Excuse me, every rookie fantasy draft. He is definitely going in the first round if that happens. If that dude blazes, there's literally nothing not to like about him in the community's eyes. And I'm part of the community. I like him more too, knowing that I shouldn't care that much if you go 4.5 as opposed to 4.55. But hey, I will, because people will be like, oh, that's so much faster. That 0.5 of a second. That's so much faster than I expected. And I'll be one of them like, yep, give me a reason to like him. I like him more.
There will be some creative control on him. I don't think he'll even run at the combine, because then he's running back to back with who would be next in line before and after him. Sometimes, like literally, if you're like, ugh, I know the guy ahead of me is going to run a 4.32 and then I'm the next one up, you know, like,
right.
Doesn't he kind of feel like he may be the one that, because I've seen some questions about how tall is he actually, you know, like just, he's a weirdly built guy, but I wonder if he does the things that benefit him and then, you know, slaps in the 4.59 pro day 40 time and goes, oh yeah, that's what I would have run if I went to the combine, but like, probably not. But there's a lot of those profiles that are patchwork together and we only can go based on that data. So I don't hate it. I think there's some high ADV potential with that pick. So like the pick, Shane. Last one. What are you doing at the 210? Give us your guy.
So I don't want to go with the same guys that I went with in the last draft. So that's going to leave out one of the running backs. I don't want to go with another tight end because I don't want to be captain tight end. And that, you know, that's not just the deciding factor. There's a few guys I'm vacillating between. I'm going to go with Tez Johnson. I'm going to go Tez. I'm going to get to see him at the Senior Bowl. He's someone I'm very interested in seeing for multiple reasons. We were talking about wide receivers, how many of them are left that are in a certain tier, right? I think Tez is the end of his own tier. Wherever that may land. I think he's very explosive. I think there's upside there. Again, the format might not lean towards him, but at this point of the draft, I kind of want to shoot ceiling. I feel like the rest of the draft, I've kind of gone, I don't want to say safe because I took Tyler Warren at 104, but I definitely did not take any risks, I don't feel. So I take one risk in the second round, right? It's this 210. If you're not willing to take risks at the 210 in the draft, then you're not even alive. Your pulse is completely stopped, and you should probably call an ambulance.
Yeah, Mitch, listening to a lot of these Senior Bowl preview shows, Tez has been the one that a lot of people bring up of like, he needs to go there and just look like he is an outlier. Like the Roman Wilson looked last year and Tank Dell looked the year before because he's tiny. I mean, he's listed at 5'9", 165. So he's going to be one of the guys where you look on the field and you're like, I know you guys weren't there last year, but Jacob Cowing looked like this. He was just way smaller than everybody. Now he was fast, but he didn't stand out other than he was super tiny. Like he was quick. You could tell why he was there, but you left the Senior Bowl and he did get injured at the Senior Bowl too, but you left the Senior Bowl like that's not a guy where the NFL is like, yeah, that guy can start day one. Like he's going to be a day 3 pick. And that's kind of the fear with Tez Johnson. And this, I know you use a lot of cohorts to pick players out, Shane, but like, I think Tez is a little bit of an outlier bet. So next week is going to be make or break for him. Like he's going to have to show he is the best route runner, uncoverable guy at the Senior Bowl. Otherwise, people are going to go too small. Round 3, round 4 pick. I'm not taking him this high in a draft, but I can see the world. I can see the narrative.
Do you guys remember the Dion Lewis, Derrick Henry photo that just kind of ruined Dion's his career? Like no one heard from him again afterwards. Like it's a real thing, and watching on TV is really hard to see until like you see 2 people just stand next to each other. You're like, oh, or like the DK Metcalf. Oh, that one when they're all working out in the gym. I don't remember who he's standing with, but DK Metcalf.
Around DK Metcalf and was it? I'm trying to think who the third guy was. Was it Elijah Moore? There was another Ole Miss guy.
Might have been. Yeah. But I mean, he's twice the size of everybody. And I mean, and if you're the small guy, that just doesn't work out very well.
Hey, just real quick. Dion Lewis had a nice little run there for 2 seasons. You know what I mean? There was like 2 or 3 seasons there where he was a little dynamo. So, sometimes you're small and mighty. I'm just saying.
Well, you know how this can mess with you is until I looked it up at the beginning of this year, you would watch Oregon and you're like, Evan Stewart's huge. But he's not. He's actually pretty small. But compared to Tez Johnson, he's big. But you look at him and you're like, oh, he's the big receiver. You know what I mean? And then you're like, what is Evan Stewart? Like 5'11"? You know what I mean? Like he's not tall. But you look and you're like, oh, yeah, he's the big receiver that they're using. So anyway, we'll see. Mitch, last pick. What you doing?
Speaking of small and mighty, I'm going RJ Harvey. He's older prospect with fumbling issues. That's what you're going to hear with him. But all I say is just go on YouTube, watch like the first quarter of the Colorado game. Like he runs a wheel route and the linebacker takes a great angle, but the linebacker doesn't have a chance because Harvey's just flat out faster than he is. And I think that fits today's NFL so well. And so he's actually my running back 5, but in this draft, I couldn't take him that high because it's 0.5 PPR. And I think a lot of his game is going to come through the passing game. So I could take him towards the end of the second knowing, hey, I'll get some rushing to go along with it. And then, do those little bit of PPR points that I can as it goes.
Yeah, I mean, RJ Harvey was, where do we take him? At RB 4, 5, 6, 7, RB 8. You guys shocked that we only took 8 running backs in this class, in this format? Did that shock you? I think this might be the lowest that we've taken thus far in all of the mocks. Only 8 running backs off the board. Shocking to you guys?
Maybe.
Is it the running backs? There's so many of them that they're starting to push down in these drafts that we're doing. Is that a real thing?
That's exactly it. Like I love Dylan Sampson, love him, but I mean, yeah, maybe he goes in the 5th round and he gets stuck behind whoever. Maybe he goes to Jacksonville and he gets Tank Bigsby, and we just don't see him. We love 15 running backs this class, but there's probably going to be 5 of them that we actually like to play during the season, maybe 8. But, there's going to be a lot of guys that we try to talk about that everyone has their favorite. And so just get your favorite if they get a good landing spot.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So I think this is going to be true to life because the NFL draft is going to happen and they are going to land in spots that we don't like. Someone is going to land in Philadelphia because guess what? They're going to need a backup running back because Will Shipley ain't it. Someone's going to land in, I don't know, Green Bay. Like we see it every year. Now, should we look at it and go, you know what? That's just the way of the NFL now. That's not absolutely a death sentence by any means. Like we've seen multiple backfields that can support multiple players, Tampa Bay, Detroit to a higher level. There's a few of them out there, and maybe these will be the ones that can do it too. But that's not how we think. Like I don't think our minds are there yet. So I think this is probably a pretty true to life way the draft will go. Obviously, if one of these quarterbacks ends up going in the 3rd or 4th round, maybe things will change. Looking at you, Jackson Dart. Hopefully not, though. But I think this is pretty true to life of how most drafts will go.
Yeah, I'm looking at Ollie Gordon, DJ Giddens, Dylan Sampson, Woody Marks. Like, I think we're getting to the point where none of these guys you can just rely on their capital, but all of them could easily have gone in the second round if they went to a spot where you're like, man, the competition there is only one guy and they have a chance to play right away. So to be determined, but I think we kind of did it right with the I'm guessing probably 8 running backs go in the third. If we did a third round, like people would just go, oh, this guy's going to get day 3 capital. He's got a chance to be on a depth chart. I'll just take him. I'm not going to take one at 212. I think Quinn Ewers still goes in the second round. People are going to say it's a wasted pick, but second round quarterbacks do have a window. Mm-hmm. And, not saying he's going to get like a Will Levis situation, but again, he's one of those guys that could easily get drafted in a spot like Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe, and there's a path for him to play in year 1. And at that point, I can probably move him for something. Now, if Trey Harris or Colston Loveland or one of those guys is just great right away, I'm not going to be able to trade Quinn Ewers for that guy, but I'm going to probably be able to move him around and turn this 212 into a future second and a third, or a running back in a third, or something like that gives me more flexibility. And I just don't think I have to take a running back because I can probably get another one at 312 that I like just as much. So Quinn Ewers is the last pick. I like this draft, guys. Very balanced. I did not think it would be this balanced with 5 quarterbacks, 8 running backs, 3 tight ends, and what would that be? 8 receivers. So like literally very balanced top to bottom. Final thoughts, Shane, I'll go to you first.
Maybe we drafted too many wide receivers. Now I want to take back my pick and take the wide receiver off the board and go ahead and take Ollie Gordon. Did you take him? I can't see. I'm blind. No, yeah.
No, he did not get drafted.
Yeah, I want to take Ollie Gordon. I just didn't because I did it last time and I want it to be different, but now I want less wide receivers. No, I mean, it's balanced. I think this is, the names are going to change at running back. We 100% know that, but this is in this format, this draft makes sense. And in other formats, where it's a 0.2 PPC, 1.75 tight end premium, then you're going to have to do some harder math, full point PPR. Then you're going to really have to use your brain like, ooh, yeah, I know the tight ends get more, but the running backs do get 0.2 for every carry. So maybe that'll cancel out some of that tight end. Some of that tight end receiving points that would have gone that would make me think to go Warren at 104 instead of nope, no one on the board. No, I like the draft. I think it's true to this format, and I think that's useful. I don't think we should be out here doing drafts and just making crazy picks just for the clickbait, because that's not what we do. So I think this is a realistic draft. Hopefully, it's helpful to the people watching or listening.
Mitch, what do you got?
Yeah, with me, it's looking at the draft. I like the structure. I like everything about it. It's the Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe. It's the shots we're taking right now just because we think that's kind of the way the NFL is going to go. But if there's a chance to where these guys end up going in the third round and then everybody gets bumped up, and then all of a sudden these guys are like late second round picks and you're going to get another running back, another wide receiver, and so forth. But like Shane was mentioning with the point per carry leagues, they're becoming a lot more prevalent. A lot of the startups that I'm seeing now have point per carry built in. And if you're in a league like that, you should see 8 running backs go, in the top 14 picks probably, because that's just kind of how it works in point per carry leagues when you have this kind of quarterback profiles and that kind of wide receiver profiles coming in.
Yeah, I think for me, we're going to get to see Gunnar Helm, Mason Taylor, Terrence Ferguson. All those guys are going to be at the Senior Bowl. If there's a couple players that we just didn't draft that are going to go in like late round 2, early round 3, it's going to be tight ends. I just don't think any of us are convicted on whether we like Luke Lachey better than Terrence Ferguson. Like, we just don't know. But there's going to be 1 or 2 tight ends that gets good draft capital, and you're like, their RAS score is great. They were good at the Senior Bowl. Like, that guy should go higher than the Quinn Ewers dart throw or some of these running backs, because I think the best logic used was when you guys drafted Fannin and Loveland and said, if you hit, you are making a bigger dent NFL position-wise across the dynasty landscape than you are if you hit on Cam Scatterbu. Like, Cam Scatterbu could hit, and he could be another running back that you could maybe play every once in a while. But if you hit on a tight end and you're right, then that you could have the tight end 7. No one had, it feels like there's a lot of like Tucker Crafts in this draft, but better prospects where all of a sudden you look up in a year and a half and he's the tight end 5 because he's just starting on a team where you kind of like the offense a little bit. So it feels like that's the blind spot, but we'll save that for the future. We'll probably do some more heavy tight end premium and or 2 tight end drafts. And after the Senior Bowl, we'll get some more detail on where we think those tight ends may slot in. You can follow these guys, Dino MC, Shane is the worst, myself, Charles Chill, FFB. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow Ray on the Ray GQ now on Twitter. His old one got hacked. But like and subscribe to the channel. Hit us up in the comments. Flame us for the picks that you don't like. Continue to support us and all the other content creators on here. Good draft, guys. We'll see you after the Senior Bowl. We might do something special from the Senior Bowl, like drafting just Senior Bowl players based on hype. Little sneak preview to what we might do. But thank you again for support on the channel, and we'll sign off for this episode. Thank you.